Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Before we start the formal proceedings, I'd just like to say just a few words about the tragic death of Summer Grant in the town park on Saturday evening. Clearly, our thoughts and condolences with the parents and family of Summer, particularly tragic incident. It's at times like this that the Harlow community does come together, and the outpouring of sympathy and support from the community, as well as fundraising activities. Last time I looked on Just Giving side, there was over £8,600 had been raised, and clearly that won't compensate for the tragic incident. I think the parents do appreciate the support that Harlow community has shown. The gates to the town park will remain closed to allow the continuation of messages of support and flowers, which is clearly a substantial amount there now. Quite rightly, people want to know, the causes of the incident. The police and the health and safety executive have clearly started an in-depth inquiry, and the police have said that that's going to be a thorough inquiry and will clearly take some time. The council will of course provide all the support it can to both the police and the health and safety executive, but I'm certainly not going to attempt to speculate or attempt to guess the outcome of that inquiry or the findings it might make. We will have a minute's silence at the full council meeting next week. I don't know if anyone else wants to I would just ask that we don't have a debate about the cause of the incident. I said there is an ongoing inquiry, and we have a recommendation from the police around that. It will be a thorough and in-depth inquiry, and of course we'll provide all what we can. I don't think
Thank you, Mr. Leader, and yeah, I think it's very appropriate that we spend a moment just mentioning this terrible disaster tonight. This being the first proper meeting with the council since. I respect what you're saying, Mr. Leader, about a minute's silence at full council, and that's something that my group will thoroughly support. If I can, on behalf of the opposition members, send indeed my thoughts and prayers, and our thoughts and prayers to the family of Summer. Absolute horrific tragedy that really knocked us all over on Easter, and I too have been really quite impressed by the way the Harlow community has come together over this. If you looked over the weekend on numerous Facebook pages, numerous internet posts, and you look at just the level of the number of flowers and memorial that are at the gates of the town park, it's an incredible outpouring from the Harlow community. Like you say, it doesn't replace the tragic loss of this little girl, but our thoughts and prayers are with the family and all those affected across the town, and we'll say some things at the silence of full council. So thank you for raising it.
Right, now move on to the formal business of calendar. Item 1 on the agenda, apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Danvers and Sullivan. Item 2 on the agenda, are there any declarations of interest? Item 3, the minutes of the Cabinet meeting of the 25th of February on pages 4 to 8. Will I take those as a correct record? Are there any matters arising? There are no written questions from the public, there are no written questions from councillors, and there are no petitions. So item 8, the forward plan on pages 9 to 15 of the agenda. Would there perchance be any questions? No. I'm always prepared. A little less prepared for everything on. But, item 9, to note decisions of the deputy or portfolio holder, the decision by the portfolio holder for housing on page 16. Are there any questions? No. So noted. Right, item 10. I'm going to take 10, 11 and 12 on the block. I will formally move those.
Seconded, Chair.
Right, so just some very brief introductory words. I think basically, once again, showing strong financial control, a very small underspend on the general fund, and again, a good, strong performance in terms of controlling against budgets, and indeed a continuing improving trend around the performance indicators around the council's performance. Not so much more at this point, but are we have any questions?
Starting on page 31 on the variances, towards the bottom of the page on finance, revenues and benefit support, there's an item in the notes, additional income in respect of legal costs, 65,000. Can't quite work out how we can achieve an income from legal costs. You can write to me later.
The legal costs and the regs and bends are the costs that we raise when we actually take court action against individuals that owe the council money.
So it's recovery rather than income. It's recovery rather than income. Okay. On the next page, under other, there's an increase in bad debt provision of £250,000. Adjustment is required in respect of amounts deemed uncollectible. I'm just wondering in which area of the council's operations this has suddenly been identified.
I think we have identified those in the previous years, particularly I think in the 14 to 15 outturn reports, where we're identifying underspends that contribute to the following year's budget proposals. There are a list of items that constitute the 117,000, and they are all items that were reported in February as part of the council tax setting report.
Chair, if I may move on to the capital programme. What page? Capital programme is page 48. Page 49, table 2, the housing capital programme. About halfway down, we've got electrical upgrades to fire safety. The original estimate, 1.001 million. Spent to date is only 250,000. So suggesting that the vast majority of the spending, about 3/4 of it, will occur in the fourth quarter. Now, I would have thought that, bearing in mind the sort of major safety elements of the spend, that the spend would have been achieved much earlier or spread more evenly. So is there, although there's a nil variance projected, is the portfolio holder confident that that spending and those works will be achieved by next week?
Certainly, you can make sure that those details go through the panels. And I'd also welcome the words on voice, and it's incredible. It's an incredible achievement. You compare where it's come from with the number of weeks and months that it used to be, and how it's down to the figure it's down to at the minute. So it's a real big achievement for Harlow Council and for particularly the officers that work in that particular area.
May Chair, I think what we are trying to do here is to use our survey information wisely, and that's taken whilst a little bit longer this year than we had anticipated. We've updated those surveys, but we resourced that and we've programmed that, and we're confident the spend can be by the end of this financial year.
Yeah, that's a question, not a statement.
I agree, it's important to be prudent and to make sure that the HRE business plan is worked out very carefully, particularly with a lot of the problems and issues and challenges that we're going to face from central government going forward. So it's absolutely right that we do have that buffer zone.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. If I can direct you to page 39 of the performance report, the percentage of household waste which has been sent for recycling. Can I ask what the leader's view is of why we now have a situation that's getting worse quarter on quarter on quarter for the last 6 quarters and seems to be going in a different direction from the target?
I'll let Mark answer that, but in essence this is a reflection of national trends. It's not a particular underperformance that's unique to Harlow Council. I don't know whether Mark wants
to be honest, the council leader's answer was very much going to reflect my own answer. If you read the report and some of the comments that are made and some of the things that we need to address, but it is a national issue, you will see a trend towards people. We actually increase the amount of non-recycling we collect at the moment, but decreasing the amount of recyclable waste. It is a national trend and something that I think every local authority is facing at the moment. If you read on further into the report, you will see some of the work, particularly with them with Essex County Council and the way of education, to try and reverse what is actually a national trend regarding.
I think it's simply a reflection in the amount of non-recycled waste that is increasing. So more consumption and hence more waste. So it's not about the amount of recycling per se, it's the percentage of recycling versus the larger amount of non-recycling.
So if I understand you correctly, you're saying that because we've come out of a recession, because the economy is getting better, people are buying more and therefore throwing more away. In which case, can I direct you to page 40, the percentage of household waste composted, which is also going down quarter on quarter and getting worse away from target. And the answer to this in the report on page 40 suggests that the reason that this is going down is people are actually buying less, which is directly contradictory to the answer you've just given me in the previous answer. So, which is right? Are people buying less or are people buying more? And is that the reason for both of these targets getting worse?
I'm struggling to find where in the bit at the bottom of page 40 it says people buying less.
Some residents may be more mindful of food wastage and may have amended their purchasing habits accordingly. Although that's officer speak, I assume that's officer speak for they're buying less.
No, I think it just means they're buying differently.
Yeah.
I just want to turn to page 20 of the report on the performance of the council, in particular significant risks and opportunities. First of all, I don't see a risk attached to the government's plans for localising business rates. I think this is an important step to drive economic growth, local economic growth, and of course the 26 billion that is estimated local authorities will keep, I think is important for local communities and important for local economies. So I don't recognise that. Where I of course have a lot of concern is the establishment of the new trading company to deal with housing maintenance and landscaping, and the issues that we've had already with the shareholders and the directors, and I know that there are delays because there's an awful lot of deals to go through. There is a significant risk to this council if the governance is not got right on this. We have taken a consistent position of opposing this, and we are holding the council to account in the shareholder group and as part of the directors too. This is the biggest risk to the council. There has been a slow process at the moment, and I'm very concerned that the council won't be able to achieve what it wants to out of this new trading company. And we should have gone down the route that we've always said, to open this out to tender.
So just a couple of comments in regard to that. So in regard to retention of business rates, the risk is in my mind in 2 areas. The first is the detail of how that's going to be done, how equalisation is going to work, what additional responsibilities the council is going to take on, has not been outlined by the government. And the second issue is around timing. So my understanding at the moment is that they're likely to phase out the revenue support grant faster than the phasing in of retention of business rates. So both of those represent a risk. If and when the government is clear what the precise mechanism for the retention of business rates is, what additional responsibilities are going to be in place, that risk may go away. I'm sincerely doubting it will, but that is a simple statement of where we are. There's considerable uncertainty in this area. As regards to the local authority trading company, it is proceeding according to the overall programme plan. Not to add much more to that. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that. Are there any further comments? No. Right. So in that case, only a second while I return to the bits. So in terms of the recommendations for items 10, 11 and 12, so just bear with me 2 seconds. Just get to the relevant bit. So item 10, the recommendation on page 17, the recommendations 1 to 3, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Item 11, the capital programmes, on page 48 of the agenda, recommendations A to C, are we agreed? Agreed. And the housing revenue account on page 62 of the agenda, recommendations A and B, are we agreed? Agreed. Thank you. Right, moving on to item 13 on page 72 to 114, Prentice Place regeneration options appraisal.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'd like to propose the recommendations that are contained in the report on page 72, but I would like to just make a slight amendment to A, because I haven't actually said which option, and it's actually option 3 is the preferred option that we would look to. And before taking questions, I just need to place on record my sincere thanks for all the support, diligence, patience of certainly Jane and Simon as we have struggled to try to come to a final solution for Prentice Place after the success of Cottersmead and the Play area. I know that there are the 2 people in the audience are from the Residents Association who have been very constructive in their discussions with me about trying to bring this to Cabinet. And it would be wrong for me not to also recognise the due diligence of the local councillors who have been contacting me on a regular basis, pressurising and making sure that their local residents are well served in this particular area. So the 3 recommendations, as I said, Chair, are on page 72, and we're happy to take any questions.
I'd like to, so before we can second that, I just want to say that this clearly has had an extraordinarily long gestation period. And I am pleased that it is getting to a conclusion where some action is going to be taken. The only thing that come out of make is clearly this is not a planning application. There is a full consultation process that will proceed from this, and then formal planning. This is about getting in place the mechanisms to enable that to happen. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Chair. Start on page 74-75 on the options for delivery. The proposal is to move straight ahead with the consultant Faithful and Gould. I think that's the intention. Without actually sort of going out to tender for that particular piece of work. I've also got a sort of query on the succeeding section on costs, where the percentage of officers' time to actually manage these things seems to vary enormously between the 3 options listed under costs. I just wonder why both schemes, or all 3 options, or well, 6 options really, are all going to require the same amount of sort of management and overseeing. I don't understand why the officer's time should vary so much. So, how can we be sure we're getting value for money by moving ahead with Faithful and Gould, and why mind if the time varies so much. That's going to be the first 2 questions, but there are some more.
Okay. Chair, in relation to the first one, as the report indicates that we're already into a contract with this company who've actually been providing us with substantial and supportive advice throughout the whole process. If we then went out to re-tender to get another, to see whether or not we could find anybody, A, that would be expensive, and also it would delay the project even further. We certainly have confidence in this organisation in being able to deliver what we want them to deliver on this particular issue. And that's why I'm recommending in relation to option 3 that this is the most pragmatic way to try to resolve this particular issue, because I do know, as my leader says, this has been going on for quite a long period of time, and it would be a shame that we are delaying it any longer than we would need to. In relation to the officers' time, to be perfectly honest, all the options are different. And some of them would require more active involvement in these particular areas. And again, if you go through at the end of the documents, and what I have done is I've put all the papers out in front, so you can actually see that we just haven't picked this one. We've actually looked at all of them. We've done a full appraisal before we've actually come to the one that we've been that we're recommending tonight.
I'd just like to add a couple of things to that. So the first thing to say is that the whole point of framework arrangements is that value for money checks are done up front to enable a speedy award of a particular company on the framework. That's the whole point of government frameworks, on which I'm involved in my day job in quite a lot. In terms of the specific percentage of officer time, the specific, not the options around the actual bill, but the options for doing the consultancy work. Yeah. The reason that it varies quite a lot is option 2 is internal management, which requires a significant amount of internal management with consultant support, and option 3 is internal management with development agency services. So the key word there is those 2 options are done basically in-house with external support, whereas with the escape option, all that to be done by the external contractor. That's why.
Thank you. I was assuming, it's a very long technical report. I've done my best to read it and decipher it, but it wasn't abundantly clear from those points that the consultants were only being used on that particular option and not the other 2.
Just to clarify, so there are 2 different sets of options. There's options that are in the detailed report around how it's going to be refurbished and what have you. The options I'm talking about are not those options. These are the options for procurement, which are on pages 75 and 76.
On the next page, on page 81, where we're talking about what's included in the residential refurbishment costs, towards the end, Harlow Council property facilities will be consulted on final specs. I'm seeking reassurance, I probably won't get it tonight, that the standards will be the 2015 building standards, category 2 for accessible buildings.
I'm advised yes.
Do you want category 2?
I believe so, yes.
You believe so?
I'll double check.
But I will repeat what I made in my opening remarks. This is not the planning approval, and so all the appropriate processes for consultation for the planning and all of those things in terms of detailed design and how it will be done at that time.
Thank you much indeed. I look forward to that. Moving on to page 84, where we're talking about lease arrangements. You're talking about lease arrangements and rental income. Getting into a bit of a bind as to how you're going to, or could set the new lease arrangements for the new retailers. Just wondering what happened to Clifton Hatch.
Sorry, what do you mean about what happened to Clifton Hatch? I drove past it half an hour ago, it was still there.
Well, how did you go about setting the rental amounts at Clifton Hatch, bearing in mind you had some shops and which aren't there now, against what you may or may not be doing at Prentice Place? So there's an awful lot of confusion as to how you actually arrive at that.
Simon, as always, it's a good question. I'm really here concentrating on Prentice Place, but certainly from a historical point of view, I'm more than happy to go back and research the rationale of the lease arrangements at Clifton Hatch when we had several shops, and there we've got the couple of shops.
I've been through the process once.
Do you want to put your mic up?
They haven't been through the process once. I'm not sure why it's appearing to be so difficult now. But thank you much. Moving on. Probably another technical question. On page 87, we talk about obviously bringing the flats up to Modern Homes programme. Are you using the money that was in the HRA for Modern Homes programme as part of the funding pot for option 3, or are you looking to treat it separately?
No, the answer is no. The answer is no, we are not using that.
Okay. Page 89, where you're looking at opportunities for the rear of the site. Towards the end of that section, there's the reference to residential units.
Yes.
And possible suggests 4 new houses could be developed at a cost of 1.2 million. So each property will be costing around £300,000 just to build. Bearing in mind you already own the land, it seems an incredibly large or well-appointed property. So again, have you got the sums right?
Do you want to answer?
No, I'll ask you a question. I don't,
oh, sorry, I'm
talking about
no, Sam, I think what you are...
But they're not currently on.
Sorry, Sam, could you ask your question again, and let me clarify for you. If you're saying that we're building any units there, houses, and they're going to cost 300,000, I think we were actually quite surprised, and that's why it has taken us a while to come round the curve to understand what was the best options, because certainly those figures have been checked, and it's my understanding that they are correct. I know, you can look like that, I look like that. For a long time I look like that.
Bizarre.
I know, I used other words.
Yeah. Finally, you'll be pleased to know, it's the appendices right at the end with all the details, appendix 3, the cost summaries. You've got on each section compensation, legal, consultation fees for retail, 3 stars, and each of those categories is blank. If you also try to look at the overall cost of each scheme, I'm not quite sure how you can keep those figures blank, because if they're going to be 0.5% of the overall cost, well, of course, they're going to, okay, proportionally they'll be the same, but there's still, there's still a number you put in there and actually get a bottom line figure for an overall cost comparison. So I don't understand why they're blank.
We didn't have those figures, but for option 3, which is the recommendation, there would be no cost there for that.
There would be no cost?
No, because the retailers could remain in situation while the work's going on.
Well, you took.
So the point being that option 3 is already the most economically advantageous. If you included those legal costs, that only applies to not option 3. That would increase the cost of your options, making the case even stronger.
And again, Simon, that was one of the clear messages that we've had when we've been going out to local residents and local businesses, that we want to keep Potter Street and Prentice Place open for business for as much as I possibly can. So again, that was also one of our delays about how could we make that work in a way that kept businesses occupied, that community engaged in that particular issue. But actually one of the nice things about one of the lots of nice things about option 3 is that actually that would reduce some of the costs, as you've already identified, to 0. We're optimistic, and again this is one of the reasons why it's taken us so long, because this is all at the end of the day about the cost of this, and we're very confident that the figures that we have received are realistic, they are achievable, and we will make sure that we stick to task to make sure that they are realised.
And one for the portfolio holder directly, how helpful do you feel the Health Centres Trust have been in this overall project?
like with all partners, they've been okay. They've been fine. We've had, well, it's like, and no, it's not an evening to be criticising partners. They, like everybody else, have had challenges and changes through the national health changes that have been occurred from the Primary Care Trust to the CCGs, from NHS England saying they did want a doctor's surgery, then they didn't want a doctor's surgery, then they wanted a bigger doctor's surgery, then they wanted a smaller doctor's surgery. And it has been difficult for all of us because we have been dealing with a number of partners. But I'm pleased to say that we've had a very constructive and positive and continue to have that sort of relationship with the Trust.
Okay. Right. Are there any other questions or comments?
Well, we've got some comments.
Oh, sorry.
No, that's I think one of the candidates. No, you had your hand up first. My man of manners.
Okay. I've got to say, Tony, I normally look forward to regeneration reports. This one, I've been on the council for 18 years. I've learned to read reports fairly quickly. This one I had to read 3 times. It's not the best written report, and it pains me to say that about any report that comes before this council, but it really was a toughie to read, and I think it could have been written slightly better. From the point of view of people who I know who live around Prentice Place, they'll be very thankful that this has finally come to conclusion. I do think within the ward there is a view that the Health Centres Trust hasn't been as helpful and as keen to work with the council on all levels as perhaps the portfolio holder for regeneration has given them credit tonight. But I understand the situation he's in with having to deal with partners all the time. I'm not. I have serious concerns about where we're going with this. I'm not sure the option you're going for is the best option. But I haven't got anything better to recommend. I think residents will be really pleased that something is actually finally being done. I hope you can stick to the costs that you've put in there. I have a concern about that. I'm relatively pleased to see the level of contingency that's in the build. Approximately 1/8. I think is reasonable for this sort of build and may just put us out of the fire. But building costs are going up and up and up all the time. Wandering around London today, just how many cranes there are and how much is being built, and that's only putting more and more pressure on construction costs. So I hope we don't end up with a scheme that we've chosen that we then can't financially deliver or we deliver over budget. But I do know that the residents in the area will just say, well done, let's get on with it, because I think they're fed up of waiting here. So I accept the situation you're in. I understand the difficulties. I think you've been too kind to some of the partners. But I'm glad to see we're finally getting some.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think it would be remiss of me not to say a few words on this project. I think people don't realise just how happy I was to see this item up here tonight, and I've waited a long time to say a few words about this project. But I think, going back to what Tony said, I think people need to remember this is the final part of the jigsaw within that community and area. There was actually another 2 projects that were part of the original GAT2 project that have already taken place within the Potter Street region and are really successful. One of the best played parts probably in Harlow, and some building of some much needed new housing on the Castles Mead site. This third part, which is the long awaited part, and it's finally here tonight and taking another step forward. Councillor Johnson, I do agree, it will be more than welcome by the local community that I can assure you have played an active part on trying to push this forward. I also not only pay credit to the local residents, but also the local residents association that have been more than active on this subject over the last few years. And I know, along with Emma and Maggie, we've been working very closely with the Residents Association and all the residents that continually ask questions on this subject, and I'm really pleased to see this here tonight. I'd just like to echo a couple of things and add on to something else that Tony said, and Anthony's thanks to the officers and the other people that played a large part in that and getting to this final part here today, and hopefully a much needed improved facility and more needed housing for that area. But also I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Tony. You thanked everyone except for himself When Tony took on the role of Portfolio Health and Regeneration, he took on this issue, and this was a very big issue for him to resolve. And Tony has not only had myself and Maggie chasing him all around the place for the last 2 or 3 years on this issue, along with other officers. Tony has worked diligently to try and get this resolved, and I'd like to place on my record my thanks to Tony for all the hard work that he's put into it.
Like Mark, I'm very happy that something has finally come. I think this has been an ongoing issue long before I was councillor, long before my time. I came in as an issue, and it was the first thing raised to me, I think, when I became a candidate and was talking to residents and knocking on doors, and it still is something that's regularly raised. I think at times, I think it's fair to say, I felt frustrated by the situation. I do thank the officers and Tony for their patience with us at times, but to be fair, the frustrations of all councillors only echoed the frustrations of residents who have felt this project is long overdue and just felt that it hadn't gone. There's a number of issues why, and I've kind of felt from talking to residents over the past 4 years of serving, actually none of them wanted excuses, they just want it done. So I'm glad that something has happened and come forward. It wasn't the project we originally talked about, it wasn't a project that was talked about when I first came in, and it's one of these projects that felt like every time we took a step forward, we felt like we were finally getting there. We had 2 steps back and there was another hurdle shoved in front. I'm not quite sure why, and I'm sure it's something that once this is done we need to look into so that it doesn't happen again. The working with partners became problematic with changes in the NHS and different things that then held up further, and then different partners. It took a long time for us to agree and get everyone around the table to the place we are now. I'm really happy that social housing will be there. The biggest thing that I've found most difficult since I've served my 4 years is that we've had those flats empty, and they were empty just before I became a councillor, and it wasn't something I would have agreed with. Had I been in, it should have been kept as temporary housing. I think the project thought that it would come around sooner, it didn't. I'm really glad to get those back into use. We've got a huge housing crisis, and there's families out there that I really hope will come with good use. And more than anything, to have our shops back. I'm proud to live in Potter Street. I think we've got the best fish and chip shop in Harlow. And it'd be great if people wouldn't have to trip over to get there, while it felt like sometimes it's been a neglected area with the shops and stuff. So I'm quite looking forward to having that redone. The residents have rightly asked a lot of questions on this, and I'm sure they still will. This is not the proposal we always thought we were going to get, and rightly so, that we need to keep going forward and we do consultation. But I do thank the Resident Association's patience and the residents' patience with some of us. It hasn't been an easy journey for this project, but I'm glad that we're here, and I'll be happy to vote for this tonight to finally get some movement in what felt like something that might never ever come around.
Well, just to summarise, and thank you for all those that contributed to the discussions. Whilst I hear the concerns of the opposition, I don't accept them, because the difficulty is you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't. I made a strategic decision that I was going to put everything in front of people so that they were aware of the complexity of the challenges that we were facing, and that actually we were not making easy decisions. So whilst you might think the report is badly written or is complex, in all fairness, that's the report, because that is the truth that we have been dealing with over a period of time. And what we want to do is, once this has been passed, which I hope my colleagues will, is that we will carry out as in the recommendation B, we will carry out a consultation with the local businesses, with the GP surgery and the Residents Association, so that they can actually fully understand and appreciate that. And that could happen during the time when we're all out electioneering, because it won't be part of any political situation. Mark is absolutely right. This is the final part of the jigsaw. But when this was first designed, we always knew that Prentice Place was going to be the most difficult and the most challenging situation, because not only did we have residential, but we had businesses that we had to deal with. And everybody knows that there's been a number of false starts and false storms about bulldozing the whole lot down, to doing hardly anything, to moving the doctor's surgery, etc. Whilst I hear the concerns about the Health Trust, I have to say, if there were any concerns, it is not with the Health Trust. It is actually with the National Health Service, because during this period of time, we have had significant changes in the commissioning of GP practices throughout the whole of the town. And at one stage they genuinely were saying they didn't want a doctor's surgery there. Then they said that they wanted a bigger one, and then they decided they wanted a certain space, so we put a certain space in Carter's Mead to enable that doctor's surgery to go there. Then it was the commissioners who changed their mind again and said they didn't want, and actually both the GPs, the patients of that surgery and the staff of that surgery shared our frustration that every time we asked the NHS what it is we wanted, we actually got a different response. And my fear was, if we carried on talking, they would come back with different solutions. So we have now fixed on the solution that we think is appropriate and sensible. We do have a good working relationship with the Harlow Health Trust, and I am optimistic that we will be able to provide a good surgery to meet the needs of that whole of the community. One of the things that you were saying, Simon, I fundamentally disagree with. If you are going to do it, you do it as a whole, and you do it as a collective, and you do it for the spirit of the community. But leaving one area isolated, run down, possibly neglected, does not serve that community, and it does not serve those businesses in the best way we possibly can. And I'm also, as John has alluded to and Emma has alluded to, it is right and proper that we've looked at the costs of this and actually made a clear commitment about a dedication to social housing. And again, I know that that has been a driver and a commitment that we wanted to get through to make sure that we can bring these properties back into, and where we can bring some of them back into social housing, that's exactly what we should do, and we now need to get on with that. And finally, if you look at the timescale, option 3 gives us that opportunity to get things on the ground fairly quickly, start moving, and then hopefully, and then I'll take the applause and the congratulations, but thank you, Mark. We only congratulate ourselves when we've actually delivered something. But I hope it's been a robust debate, Chair, and I look forward to the support of the Cabinet.
So there are no further contributions. So with the amendment to option A, so I would suggest that currently reads agrees that the regeneration of Apprentice Place proceeds on the basis of the affordable option which has been identified, and to insert open brackets option 3 close brackets at that point. Are we agree on recommendations on page 72, A to C?
Agreed, Chair.
Thank you. Right, brings us on to item 14, the confirmation of the Old Harlow Article 4 directions on page 114 to 125.
You're proposing that second.
I'll move it.
Sorry, I'm delighted to second it.
Are there any questions, Charles?
I know that Councillor Livings as well wants to make some comments. There's just some broad comments on this. I think this is quite straightforward, this report. Old Harlow Conservatives very much welcome the fact that this typographical error has been resolved and that the properties on the High Street have been included in the conservation area. Of course, there is widespread support across Old Harlow Ward for the conservation area for obvious reasons. It's the most historic part of our community, and in fact there would be a lot of support for extending areas of the conservation area to cover other historical parts of Old Harlow. And I know that there's a lot of passionate feeling in my ward about this. But I very much welcome the report. It's good news, and I look forward to further discussions about protecting the historical elements of this community.
Mr Chairman, as an Old Harlow councillor, I welcome this report. We have many beautiful old buildings in Old Harlow that need to be preserved. And to see these numbers 79 to 97 High Street to be put into conservation area at long last can only be a good thing. So I very much welcome this report and give thanks.
So recommendations on page 115, A to C. Oh, no, no, just sorry, the recommendation on page 115. Are we agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you. So item 15 15, the district heating boiler replacement programme on pages 126 to 130.
I'm pleased to move this, Chair, recommendation A on page 126.
I will second. Any questions? Comments?
I've got comments, but questions first of all. In terms of questions, and someone's going to hate me on making this question, but I'm very keen to understand what type of system is going into Rosewood Close. And if you could just let me know, I'd be grateful. Sorry.
These were obviously the story of this is that these were very old, expensive heating systems that obviously in some of the areas that were causing people considerable expense, and so this is to update them, and they will be gas. There'll be gas in terms of the type of heating system that they'll have. But this is actually tying in with our ambition to cut down on fuel poverty and to make sure that people can have reasonable bills for their energy.
Didn't quite take my question, but very similar. My interest is obviously Teesdale, but a lot of work has been looking at over the last few years. It was all quite interesting. I think last year there was all talk of a biomass system, but I understand that's all now been sidelined. But I'm not quite sure what is going in there now. Is it all going to be gas or oil or combination or solar panels or what is it?
It's gas.
It's all gas.
Right, there are no further contributions. So the recommendation on page 126, A, are we agreed? Agreed. Right, a good segue, having just done sort of modernisation of boilers and more energy efficient, is into item 16, the carbon management plan, which is on a supplementary document. So this is page 2 of the supplementary document.
I thought we moved the recommendations, Chair.
Happy to second, Chair.
I think you would have expected me, Mr. Chairman, to ask or at least speak on this, since I was the one that raised that it wasn't on your forward work plan, and since the current plan runs out tonight, glad to see we're actually getting one in with a couple of hours' notice left. It's obviously really good to see that the work that we started in my administration is continuing, and the Council is staying committed to the carbon reduction. A small point on page 8, if we look at the graph of where we've come from and where we're going with carbon reduction in this town, if you look at the last 3 years of my administration, 2009-10 through to 11-12, there was a 1.1 million kilogram carbon reduction over a 3-year period. That's considerably slowed and almost, one would say, tailed off now. In the last 3 years, well actually the first year of the Labour administration, the carbon load grew in 12-13, and what we've seen in a similar 3 years of a Labour administration is only a 300,000 kilo CO2 reduction. So I'm glad that we're still reducing our carbon levels, but by nowhere near as much as we were a few years ago. I'm glad to see that we've now got the plan. I'll be making sure we stick to the plan and asking questions as we go forward through it in the next couple of years about this plan. But well done for getting it done.
Just to respond to the question on the graph that Councillor Johnson has raised, and that is something that shouldn't surprise anybody that the first couple of years are the best couple of years, because when we, and rightly so, when it was first introduced in 2010, you had the quick, easy fixes to make straight away, like changing taps in the civic centre straight away. They were easy to do, they were quick, they were low budget, you got the savings straight away. When this plan, as it goes forward and progresses, and it's a living document, it will always be more challenging as we go on to meet our targets. The easiest couple of years are always the first couple of years, because that's when you can make quick, easy fixes. Thank you, Chair.
I think I only add that I'm sure Councillor Johnson isn't suggesting that either metaphorical or literal switch was flicked on the change of administration that suddenly changed the carbon impact, because clearly it's the nature of these things that the carbon impact in a particular year is a result of activity that was taken in the previous year. But beyond that, any further comments or questions? Sorry, one other thing I will just add to this though. This is clearly not a sort of that's it now for the next 10 years. There's clearly further work to be done in identifying specific initiatives to meet the carbon target identified in this plan. And that will be something that we will continue to focus on. So, if there are no further contributions, then the recommendation on page 2 of the document, recommendation that AEC adopt the carbon management plan and review in 2018, are we agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Right, so item 17, referral from the Scrutiny Committee on pages 131 to 147.
I move that, Chair.
I'll second it.
Yeah.
Great, just wanted to introduce this really quickly. Quite a lot of work has gone into it. I also wanted to thank the Scrutiny Committee. They're taking the time to review this. And obviously officers there, but especially the Youth Council and former Youth Councillors, a mix of young people that have engaged in trying to make, so I'm really proud that we've got a Youth Council. I know Epping next door decided they didn't want one for a while and then realised it was a bad decision and reinstated it, thankfully. But I believe that a firm part of our democracy is engaging young people and getting them to feel part of this town, that it's part of them. And buying into what's the best for everyone in the community. Our Youth Council's done an incredible amount of work in the years that it's existed, and very proud to see some of the successes it's had, and I'm really supportive to try and help enable it. And I'm sure this is echoed on both sides of the table for all of us as adult councillors to enable our youth councillors to make the difference in the town that they can, and to further engage with young people where we can. Because just because they can't vote doesn't mean that this isn't a say that they've got in the town. It's their future, and I'm really thanking everyone for their work we can.
Mr Chairman, yes, I welcome this report, and I particularly am interested in item B, where we're trying to promote and encourage other groups further across the field, areas and things like that, and I think that they can only be a good thing, and I welcome it.
Can I just say as well, welcome any further integration we can have with the Youth Council. From a Church Langley councillor perspective, up until the recent change of councillors, Hannah, who was one of our youth councillors, was very active in Church Langley. She, from a non-political basis, would come along to our council's ward surgeries to be introduced to the public and take up issues, young people's issues when they came to our surgeries. And she was very involved with the 3 Church Langley councils, and we really welcome that. I've got to say, since the new bunch have been elected, I don't even know who my present youth councillor is in Church Langley. So perhaps that says something about the individuals on the youth council as well as us and the integration, and perhaps the whole thing does work 2 ways. We had someone that was really willing to work with us, and it worked. Like I say, it'd be really great to actually meet whoever my new youth councillor is.
Really quickly back to point, I do recognise Eric said, and Hannah was a phenomenal youth councillor in general, yeah. But just she was exceptional. There is obviously the youth council change every year. They have their elections every January, and they've just gone on their residential and try and get everything. The youth council a few years ago, they don't generally tend to work in wards like we do, so they tend to be more based around schools, but did make the decision to try and integrate with the adult councils and recognising that that's how we work as a Harlow council. And I know they're keen to set up an event and try and do that, and I'll try and facilitate that as best I can to try and make sure that it links up. I know actually they are a phenomenal group. Actually, I was very impressed at their last youth council meeting, seeing the change since they've gone on the residential, and their confidence is phenomenal. Some of the new young ones, so I'm sure they'll be very keen to engage with all of us.
No further contributions, then the the recommendations on page 131 that we adopt those two additions. Are we agreed?
Very good.
Thank you. So then, just the minutes of the Cabinet Overview Working Group for noting. Unless we've got companies so noted. There being no matter of urgent business that we haven't already addressed, then it is closed. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.